getting everybody aligned with this.
Yeah. push back because of some bad weather. And turn it over to Howard and Pete.
All right, well, I'm going to take the stage then and go ahead and start our presentation. I was just saying to Becky that this presentation is kind of a transitional phase. The budget book here is an excellent budget book, but it is in a different format. So Sam and I have been working back and forth. So I will tell you, typically I would have more numbers in my budget presentation, but they would have kind of overlapped with what you have in your budget books, and I didn't want to do that to you. So we stayed pretty, pretty steady and get through the quick presentation. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Brian Reese, for those on camera, Superintendent of Schools, and we're here to present the budget for the 24-25 year for Plainville Community Schools. And I just wanted to give you some context. A lot of times when we talk about the budget, the first question people ask, even though it's really not a budget question, is what does it look like for our enrollment? So what you have in front of you is a 10-year enrollment slide. And as you can see, the enrollment essentially stays pretty steady. We have a year or two of increases coming, especially at the high school. At the same time, our other numbers stay pretty consistent with slight rises over the next 8 years. So from a budget planning perspective, that's wonderful news. It's usually easier to plan for budgets when you have consistent enrollment. This is probably what you already know, is where we are on the map. The State Finance Project recently did configuration and looked at all the data and said, where do we fit in terms of DERGs? And while the State Department doesn't officially do district reference groups anymore, this group does for the state, and they put us into DERG G, into the groups. And you can kind of see where DERG G is by all the orange-shaped towns. If it's a gray-shaped town, that means there wasn't enough data for them to provide the study. So one of the items we thought you would want to know about is kind of what's happening with our staffing. Plainville has experienced quite a bit of changes to our staffing over the last 6 years. In the pie chart on the left, you have the hard numbers of the changes in our staffing in the last 6 years. If you think about our total staff, that's a pretty significant change. So to put it into fractions, about a third of our current staff were hired on or after the pandemic period. It's a lot of people. If you think about walking into a classroom, it's only a few years down the road. It's a large change for you. More than 20% are in their first year or their second year. So if you think about our professional development needs, if you think about our needing to support our teachers to grow and to learn the Plainville way, and to become proficient more into their career, that's something we need to think about. So professional development is certainly something that's in this budget presentation, or budget. What are we doing in the schools? We are working very hard. We worked very hard on creating an environment for our students, especially after the pandemic. We wanted to make sure students were coming back into very safe and very engaging classrooms, and our teachers have been hard at work supporting our students do that. We've seen success by decreasing our absentee rates, and we're continuing to work on those multiple strategies for that. As we move into this next year, we're focused more on instruction for every student. And we already instruct every student, of course, but we're looking to really focus on our Tier 1, focus on making sure every student's getting a base level of instruction and making sure that instruction is exactly what we all believe it needs to be. So we are working with the Marzano group and working with our teachers to have that be the next step of our major improvement process. So where do we spend our money here in Plainville? So here's the chart that really tries to help you have the future conversations of this group. So you take the gray half of the pie, and you take the brown, so make sure it looks like mustard to me, to the left, and you add those together, you get approximately 66% of our budget. That's all staff salary. If you take additional 21%, you end up with our entire staff salary. And that's 64%, my apologies, plus 21%. So that's just staff. So what happens a lot of time in budget processes is that we talk a lot about kind of trying to look at the supplies and trying to figure out, is there $10 we can find there? And we do that, and that's important. At the same time, the leverage points, unfortunately, are all in that staffing piece because that's where the majority of our money is spent. Of course, we have insurance, transportation, and tuitions in there, and those are important, they're necessary, and they're also a very small percentage of our overall budget. And I think that's important for us to know, kind of going into all the pages of numbers that we're about to look at. So how have we done on the state assessments? So there's been a general trend. The right columns are showing you the state of Connecticut overall. So I want you to take two things away from this. In Smarter Balanced Math, which is our 3rd through 8th grade, we've had some increases in overall average scores, and we've also stayed almost entirely above the state average, which means that we're doing good work, and we have more work to do. With Smarter Balanced Language Arts, we are overall a little higher than the state in general, and we've had kind of an up and down year. So we are on the left, and the state of Connecticut's on the right. Now, this is the exciting data, and this is DiLorenzo, if you were here a while back, referred to it, but I wanted to show it to you in actual stats. This is the average SAT score. And really, if you think about what we're trying to do, this is probably our most important score point piece, because it means what students are working with as they're leaving us, as they're getting ready to move on. And this shows you that in the past 2 years, while the state's had an average decrease of their overall score on SATs, in both language arts and math, we've seen an average increase. And that's a really good sign for us, and that we need to continue working on what we're doing. Looking down the road, what's not in this budget is the opportunity that we don't have in the budget, but we think is important, and we need to, it gets an honorable mention. If there's an opportunity, if something happens where we have a change in staffing or a change in a budget situation, we've really identified we'd love to increase the opportunities for our students in art classes, in CTE classes, career technical education. And this would give us the opportunity to not only support our kids to have more opportunities, it would also help us to address some of those concerns that the state has laid out for us. Because in both areas the state's identified, our students don't have the percentage of opportunities in these classes that they would like. Not unintentionally, we do not have the Italian classes, which I understand were very popular a number of years ago. And so that's something that if we had the opportunity, we would take advantage of. And my understanding is that there's been a conversation throughout the district about world language and those opportunities being extended down into the lower grades, which I think we need to keep on our agenda. I think what's important about tonight is that it's round one. So you have a much better copy than here. Somehow it doesn't project well. But this is round one of our budget process. We've been working on it since, well, I've been working on it since October. Sam's been working on it since last May, or earlier, I'm sure. But this is round, the first night, the 23rd is our next night, and the 25th is our next. And if we need an additional evening, we will find that. To work through the actual details of the budget, to work through, how things work, what are opportunities. We've been through this budget a lot. I think I've driven my staff a little crazy trying to figure out if there's any way to get this budget lower. Unfortunately, with salaries and with benefits, and even with decreasing a number of staff members, this budget, and I can't believe I'm even saying it, this budget's at a 5.59 increase. And having always been proud of bringing in very small increased budgets, I cringe to say that number, but that's already decreasing our staffing levels. And that's for a variety of reasons. It's the year we come off of ARP-ESSER, the grant funding. That's some of it. Some of it is just the cost of doing business, where the whole increase in cost has caught up to us. And those costs are in special education, those costs are in supplies, those costs are pretty much everywhere where everything is more expensive to work through. So we have the budget books for you. There's a number of charts in there that will help you kind of make more sense of that increase. So we're looking forward to working with you. And we're ready to start answering questions. Sam said you had a nice procedure last year where when there were questions that required more than a quick answer, that we went ahead and put them into an FAQ and had that available for you. So I thought that sounds like a good process, especially as some of the questions we may not have the perfect answers right off the bat. So we can do questions, or we can move into the budget.
Of course. Regarding the changes in staffing, you had spoken about that there was an increase of 1/3 to the current staff. One question I have is looking at this, it's hard to tell because there's no comparison of this graph of what it was before and what it is now. So 1/3 of what? Was that teachers? Was it
So great question, because it helps me clarify. 33% of our staff are new. I'm not talking about an increase to our overall staffing. I'm really glad you asked that question. So 33% of our staff are new in the last 6 years.
across the board?
Right. They are new. That doesn't mean they're new positions.
Okay,
The people are new, not the positions.
the people are new but not the positions?
Right.
Okay, that wasn't clear.
Thank you for helping me clarify that. So
That's what I'm hearing.
I know what I meant to say.
Okay. For the next slide, we talk about the tier 1 and the base level of instruction. Is that for specific grades, is tier 1, or is it across the board? Each grade is a tier 1 at a certain level?
So another, it's like I planted you there. We really didn't talk about this. So when we talk about tier 1, 2, and 3 in schools for the last, for a number of years, we talk about that every student needs tier 1. Every student needs, steps 1 through 10 of instruction in kindergarten, pre-K, all the way up to 12th grade. That's tier 1, what everybody should get. The kind of instruction we do in every classroom is tier 1.
So each grade has a tier 1?
So everyone is in tier 1.
Okay.
Okay, so then some kids find themselves not making the progress we want them to make, and we usually talk about those kids more, because then we put them into tier 2, which they're still sometimes in the classroom, but they're getting additional supports.
Okay.
So they're getting like reading support, math support. They might be getting some kind of support for their executive functioning. So that's tier 2. They need more than just what everybody should get, for lack of a better term. So, and that's a much smaller group. So a lot of times we talk about what we do in tier 2. What kind of reading programs do we have for students who are struggling, right? And that's really important to do. Right now, we're taking a focus and saying, we really need to kind of step back and take a look at the whole process of tier 1 support teachers to make sure that they have the strategies they need. Especially given the 33%
Right, exactly.
are new within the last few years.
Right.
You can imagine they have not been working together for very long, so thank you for helping us clarify questions.
On the next slide, when you talk about 24-25 budget pie chart, you've got benefits, so I'm guessing that is all staff, insurance, such as health.
Insurance, social security, life insurance, health insurance, life insurance, social security, there's something else.
FICA. Okay, now, how is that different than what you've got in here, 1% being insurance? Is that the buildings insurance?
So that's liability insurance
Okay.
for the building,
Okay,
and athletic insurance. So if you play sports,
Mhm.
there's an insurance we take, so if you get hurt during a sporting
right.
event, it's a separate insurance policy. I almost combine those with the other insurances, but, well, it really is a different type of insurance. It's really liability.
And for the next slide, just for clarification, looking at this, the legend is not very clear. You've got Plainville School District and then you've got State of Connecticut. So is the Plainville the blue or the orange?
So the Plainville School, so the blue is 2022, and the
Okay,
red is 2023. So, and if you look to the right,
uh-huh,
you see where it talks about the average of 22.
right.
The legend on the bottom is just the districts. On the
Oh,
right,
got it,
shows-
okay.
Tells the colors.
Okay, that was confusing. Okay, thank you.
No. If you had the question, somebody else had the question. So. And I've been watching Jared and Foster because they have questions, so I'm trying to see if they decided you asked a question or not. I don't think they did.
Just on your percentage of the budget pie, where you have 0 does not mean there are no expenses, it's just the percentage is lower than 1%.
Less than 1. Yeah. And Excel doesn't like less than 1.
Yeah.
So, well, it'll do less than 1, but then we'll add decimal points to every number.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's all or nothing. So
No, we don't want to do that.
it makes it really messy. Jared, did you have a question?
Please. So you had said about a third of new staff, 20% of new teachers, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would assume that most of the teachers that are coming into our district are coming at a lower tier as opposed to faculty and staff that are much more seasoned or senior and higher tier than folks just coming in, typically, correct?
So 10 years ago, 7 years ago, I would say definitely yes. In today's world, the volume of teachers moving has well surpassed the amount of teachers being produced by teacher institutions. So we are, I have not done a lot of it since I'm fairly short term here so far. But in general, we are hiring many more that have already been teaching because that is who is available. They are by far the best candidates. It's changed a lot. I'll give you a kind of general statistic. If I advertised in any district in Connecticut for an elementary teacher, I would typically get in the middle of a school year 100 applicants. If I did the same thing in April when all the college kids were getting released, I could get 300. If I put an elementary teacher out right now for posting, we might get 20. And they're all coming from other districts. So it is, the world has changed in who we can hire. So it's not, chances are we have hired some that have less years experience, but it's not as, the deficit's not as significant as it used to be. It used to be, yeah, you could count on somebody for less than a master's in 3 steps. That's not been the case. If I'm going on general understandings, Dave, do you have, is that been our experience here? So, because the reason we're in an area where we're competitive in some areas and we're not competitive in others. So this is the range around us is significant. So you can commute into a place where you would do better to come here, and you could very quickly commute into a place where you could make more than here. So we're kind of right in that middle section too. So, and that affects that question too, because you're not going to come here if you're already at a higher salary. So hopefully that helps. I don't know who went first.
I just wanted to comment, the camera's still focused on me and not on you, which I'm happy.
Perfect.
I'm happy to do, but I'm looking for information. They might get it better that way.
It's got the whole room.
Oh, it's got-
Oh, it's got me too?
Yeah, just barely.
I was all excited too.
Right on the
I thought I
edge.
was off the hook. Rachel, did you have a question?
I just wanted to know, of the 33% new employees, what percentage of those, please, were COVID planned to be temporary positions or not forever and ever?
I could get you that. I don't have that broken out, and it will get you as close as we can for that. It's a pretty small number, so let me get that for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
We all, in Connecticut, all experienced quite a bit of turnover for COVID. A lot of people who were close to retirement decided to move on, not to come back into kind of that situation. So there was quite a few retirements in that, but I can get you that number. So.
But we'd be able to know what ones were intended for putting us back to, indemnifying us in
Sure.
pre-COVID, what specific, so even if we had, I see what you're saying, there was turnover simultaneous with filling the positions, but we probably have a list of specific positions that were just COVID related.
We can come up with that. So the way I'm interpreting that, and so just to make sure we're clear, I'm understanding clearly, is who have we added to support us to come back from the impact of COVID?
Right, so even if we
Positions added.
if we had natural turnover there also, those positions we could back out of, we had this person before we even knew COVID was a thing, they just so happened to have moved out at the same time that that
So
COVID.
separate turnover
From what
the
our
additional
additional
COVID.
need was to bounce us back, but not intended to be forever. Because we had a lot of conversation about those hard conversations that were going to happen on the other side of COVID and having to reevaluate, is this something that we can add in long-term? Does it continue to be a need, or was it a hard stop?
Right. And so some of those positions, you'll see later in the budget book, I think that the number is 12, where at one point the numbers had inflated and we're back down by 12 because when those positions came up, we didn't hire them again. So we've already started that kind of constriction process as part of kind of getting into this year. So.
Good question. I'm sure you guys have dwindled down, I'm sure you worked at dwindling down the budgets from what you got from the administrators originally. Can we just have a list of the original asks from the administrators?
We could do that. You actually have some of it because I wanted to have you have that. So there was a request for, the major requests were for the arts, to have more arts, an arts teacher, a CTE teacher at the high school. There was also a request for a special education teacher at the elementary level. Those were the major requests. We can get you the smaller
That's the
things.
one schools. Thank you.
So to piggyback off of what Rachel was requesting, I think it'd be helpful to identify what resources we use to operationalize staffing with the ESSER dollars that we received, which were kind of, some folks believe that it shouldn't have been operationalized for operations, but it should have been used for capital improvements, right? Because those weren't dollars that were sustaining, a one-time infusion of cash. So it might be helpful to take a look to see specifically what ESSER dollars were used for staffing, knowing that we wouldn't have those resources moving forward.
And we can do that. So.
Yeah, in that light, weren't there some staff that were acquired during COVID that were hired under 2-year contracts as well?
Yes.
And how do they fit into the overall percentages of staff?
So some of those are in the 12 I mentioned, and so, but we can get you a specific piece of that. So, good. All right, we'll dive into the books.
Some estimates, that's a comparison. Odd number of years and even number of odd numbers. Students are doing better than between 22 and 23.
Typically just go through in order. All right. What's that? All right, so it's page 1. So you have your adopted budget for this year. With the increase we just talked about, the adopted budget was $43,071,797, and the increase amount is $2,407,639, and that makes for a total of $45,479,436. So, as I said, it's a 5.5 increase. So the piece of this, the next piece is really talking about the amount of that's health insurance. And the health insurance accounts for $336,000 and change.
So you're showing here that your increase would have been 4.81 without the health insurance, right? Just a question on health insurance. I know that the town usually gives us an idea of what they think it's going to be. Has there been any, is there a drop deadline that we're going to maybe get an update and hopefully that good news?
So I didn't get an official, we did talk about it, I didn't get an official note. And one of the town manager indicated that he was waiting for the grand list to be calculated. And he expected it to be done sooner than later, but when we talked, he didn't have it.
I think, and also for health insurance, I remember you asked the same question last year, the Connecticut Partnership Plan has a preliminary meeting. They had that, they said the range was 4 to 7% in collaboration with the town. We said 4 to 7%, and 5% was our best estimate, and so we're using 5%. They usually have a second meeting right around now, and they finalize that in April, which unfortunately is always after our process.
time, yeah.
So this is one of those things I've not seen in the budget book, but I like it. And you have a change log that essentially has all the changes that go down in the column. It's creative. I've never seen that before in other budget books.
We just want to track any change that happened during the course of this process, so that you have it all in one place.
So it's your worksheet.
Yeah.
Great.
Shouldn't those column headings be changed from 23 to 24 on the extreme right? It's 24, 25 budget process change log, but over to the right it says Board of Education budget 21323.
Yep, you're right. Those columns are yet to come. So
Yeah.
yes, when we do populate the middle column there,
Yeah.
it'll be the date that you approve your budget. And then the last column will be the dates of the council meeting and the referendum. Thank you.
So the summary by object, technically, we're going to be walking through each one of those pages, right? So this is just the kind of consolidation, so we can see them. So. Obviously red is a negative dollar change.
Is it possible to have actuals as well?
There's another schedule that has actuals.
What was that thing?
Actuals are on page
Oh, look up here.
8 and 9.
So page number 10 is basically the nutshell of the budget increase. Kind of like highlights each part that there's an increase, like the biggest increase is salaries, and then the benefits, transportation.
There's a breakdown of the actual increases.
Yeah, that's what, so you can see it. Sam, is that correct?
Yeah, it's another visualization, very similar to Brian's pie chart that shows the percentages using the same numbers, just visualized a different way.
What caused the transportation?
It's contractual.
That answers that.
Yeah. And it's transportation, tuition, and other services, so that's actually transportation did not go up that much, that was driven more by tuition, outplaced tuition.
That's an estimate of what it's going to be. It's higher than that, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Because of
You know very
allocation,
well
yeah.
how hard it is to predict outplaced tuition.
I just, yeah.
I would say it's one of the big risk items in this budget, even though we did increase it.
What was it this year?
So far, we're on budget,
Okay.
but we have a number of students who are waiting for outplacement, so depending on what happens.
So if they get placed in this, then we're done.
So it looks like salaries are 5.51% of the increase there. Their typical COLA is about 3%. The reason why it's much higher than the kind of the norm right now statewide support 24 to 25
So the
GL.
the contracts and the majority of salaries in schools is teachers, of course, because, and their contracts have both steps in them and annual increases. So it's a little bit of both. So when you're low in the steps, you might have a percentage that's over 3%. When you're at the top step, you might get 0.5% or nothing, right? It varies because you're walking up the steps in the contract. So some of that is the way the contract is structured, which is normal for how teachers' contracts are structured.
Yeah.
Good. No?
Now, the other big driver in that number is the loss of our ESSER grant. So there was the ESSER grant was absorbing salaries that we've now moved back into this budget. About $700,000 of that $1.5 million is what remains from positions that had been funded by ESSER. And there were more positions funded by ESSER, but as someone mentioned earlier, we planned on removing those ones that remained are necessary for ongoing operation of the district.
But so we've made the decision to keep them in though, correct?
Correct.
So,
And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. To my question is, of those positions, which is causing a large driver, this 5.51%, using what was supposed to be for capital for operations, now we're absorbing that, which is a huge driver, this almost 6% request. Which, so I'd like to see those positions and whether or not we really feel that we need them or not. So those are the positions that were created that we didn't have beforehand. Do we need them and why? What's the justification to keep them on the books when some of those were 2-year contracts, yet now we're extending them again?
But you're saying, Sam, that we used ESSER not for additional COVID-related roles, but roles that we already had on the books, but we paid to continue to have them with ESSER. Am I understanding that correctly? They're two separate things, right?
No, they were added during the course of during the last 6 years they've been added. And so
But
any
COVID wasn't
position
6
we added.
years ago.
Pardon?
Sorry, but COVID was only 3.5 years ago.
Or 3.5 years, yeah. The length of time of COVID, whenever we started, ESSER funding, and I'm including this budget year as well, so.
I think that's it, but I'm just trying to, I don't want to keep asking you this, I want to understand it right here in this moment. So from 6 years forward, 33% additional new roles. Some of that 33%
No.
was from COVID,
No,
Some.
right?
33%
Whereas,
Turnover.
current, that's not new positions.
Just turnover in
The
general.
positions
Somewhere
might have
new,
stayed,
though.
been the same, but they were replaced by someone new. Because of
right,
retirement.
that part
Yeah.
I understand.
Mhm.
But how you just answered his question though, so you're only saying that you didn't use ESSER to pay for roles that existed before the COVID need?
Right.
Okay, that's what, I had just heard it different, I want to make sure, because I heard it different than last time, I just want to make sure.
And a quick remark on Jared's statement about ESSER supposed to be used for capital and not for positions. The board did not approve any new positions through the term of COVID. So anything that we would have typically come to the board and said, look, we need this special ed position or this additional resource for the changing dynamics in the district, all of that was funded by ESSER. The positions that were deemed 2-year positions aren't in this budget. It's the positions that during the course of the security officers, special ed resources, those positions that were deemed necessary through the course of ESSER now are being funded through this next budget. But, I think we were careful to minimize that. So that's what you have in front of you.
May I ask, can we just kind of start with page 1, the certified administrators, and kind of just go page by page if anybody has a question, and so we kind of do it in an orderly fashion? I think that's how we tried to do before, just to see
Well, each object summary is gonna be,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that, that way we can start at one and kind of work. through. The section, the blue section, the number of object for, budget pages, it starts. Because, yeah, Jared was just talking about page number 4, the same part.
Just to make sure we're not confusing folks, there's two sections. So when we flip the next section, we're going to start on page number 1 now. On page number 4,
So starting with the blue tab, object budget, page number
have green.
Huh?
Have a green tab.
1. That says object budget. Oh,
Mine's white.
Mine's white.
okay.
So anyway, starting with the tab, it says object budget.
So
Let's
make
go
sure
back.
that's the right spot.
Yeah. Yeah, this breaks it down to the nitty-gritty so that you can see pretty much every, every item and where things happen and where things changed. So. Certified administrators. We have an increase here of 3.94%, yes? Go through it.
Okay, so certified administrators, the first blue line, you'll see went from 16 administrators to 17. That was an increase of 1 special education supervisor that is offset by the reduction of 3 tutors. So on one of the future pages, you're going to see a reduction of 3 tutors. And in the other thing to remark on this page is offsets. Those 3 tutors had been offset to a choice grant, and so now we're offsetting another administrator with a choice grant. The net increase on this page is $84,761 or 3.94%. I think I explained most of it in that box. How do you want to do this? Do you want to do questions as we go, or, yeah, I think that's probably. So, Commissioner, flip the page. Teachers. Go from 233.0 down to 227.4 teachers. You see just before offsets, that's a 0.16% increase. And again, that was purposeful to, recognizing that ESSER would be limited duration, so planning for ESSER and reduction in teachers to offset some of the impacts. Offsets go from 22 that included ESSER, so $1.7 million in fiscal year 24, down to $1,092,000 or 12 teachers offset.
And just because, not everybody has seen this before, nor do some of us have as good a memory as we would like to think we have. A little age there. Every page that we see pretty much has, it's going to tell us right by where the staff is located, and whether it's, you're looking at special services. And when you say offset, Sam, what are you referring to? Are you referring to grant funding or somehow kind of taking a position, kind of what you just mentioned? That's like you're taking one position and you're kind of saying we're not going to have this position, but that funding goes to this position?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So offsets are teachers or staff that are funded through grants. And so they could be funded through the choice grant, through the special ed IDEA grant, through one of the title grants. And any one of those teachers that's funded in that way will be offset on that down to the bottom of the schedule. And we show that on each one of these salary pages. There's a summary of offsets that's the last page in the previous section. So if you flip back to the previous section, look at the last page, you see a summary of all those offsets. And the theme that you're going to see when we talk about offsets is now we're not offsetting to ESSER anymore. It really stands out on this teacher page because, you know, teachers is such a large portion of our budget. So we can see that we're offsetting $656,000 less of teacher costs. We're just looking in the box to see if there's anything we didn't talk about. There's a little bit in there about retirements as well. We require teachers to let us know if they're going to retire by a date in December. It's in the contract, and one teacher has announced the retirement. Even though we require that, sometimes retirements come in later, and so we try to guess a little bit at what will happen and take into account some of that as well.
So are you saying this decrease of, 6.4 teachers is due to anticipated retirements, or?
No. The decrease is due to planned reductions because
Okay.
of, mostly because of ESSER funding.
Okay, so the increase of the 29,000, even though we're decreasing it by 6, the dollar change, is that because of the contracts that were approved a couple of years ago? So there's the teachers that are there have an increase?
The teachers that remain will have a contractual increase.
Okay,
Yes.
that's where that's coming.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Permission to move on? It gets faster too when we get through the salary pages. I think there's 79 of these. So,
We don't have to finish tonight.
certified subs can be difficult to predict because we don't know how many staff will be on FLMA at any one time, and that's the driver of how many subs we need, as well as absences. But our trending, and it's been very difficult to predict because during COVID, it was, our guess is your bet was, it was hard to predict. So we're reducing this $70,000 based on our most recent experience, and we feel like that's going to be a good amount for this coming year. It does say in that box as well what the rates are. We've stabilized the rates. We did increase our rates for this current year, just because we're having such a difficult time attracting subs. Flipping the page.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
A comment. So, to your point, COVID has had a factor in trying to identify and determine some of these things. Is it worthwhile to do a look back pre-COVID, like a 3 or 5 year look back and take an average to see whether or not some of these percentages hold true, to see what the dollar amount? That's a pretty significant decrease, right? 13%. So if you had like a historic average, you take out COVID, how does that compare to what you're looking at? I know you're using last year, so even still.
No, we did an analysis of before COVID as well, too, and looking at the current trends.
We've historically had a shortage of tutors, have we not?
Of subs.
Yeah.
So, yes. So,
And so that's why I'm concerned about a 13% decrease that we've had in the past and had to take tutors and have them function as substitutes. And I think it is more economical to use substitutes than it is to use tutors for that, or paras for that matter. And I would think it might be more prudent to even consider more building substitutes rather than having filled that role. I think Crystal has done the same thing. I have gone into a classroom that had the sub, and I had put Foster in a pre-cal class. You're in serious trouble. And the problem there is, for one day, students are not learning anything. But if we have a building sub that is not a certified pre-cal teacher or an Algebra 2 teacher, because math is one of our concerns, but anything like that, I think we'd be better off with more building subs than going back out into the pool. That's why I'm a little almost astonished by the reduction.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry.
I think too, though, this is year to year, so 3 years ago, we don't have that number in front of us, you know, before COVID, and people weren't calling out sick like they were during COVID, so this is an adjustment to the recent changes too. And also perhaps we can do some kind of incentive for attendance. We're talking about incentivizing, you know, doing attendance as a, you know, getting the attendance up for our students. You know, if the attendance was incentivized somehow with the teachers, not saying not call in when you're sick, but having that be like a goal, you'd automatically use substitutes less, you know, because the teachers won't be calling out. So maybe administration can, I don't know, work on some kind of like, I don't know, pizza party or some kind of thing, but I don't know, something to, you know, if you're not perfect attendance or if your attendance is high in the building, I don't know, it's just, there's other ways to.
I do want to, if I could just address Foster's concern, like we have had open building subs we couldn't fill. Positions that we have in place, we just can't fill them. So we do try to get the building subs filled at 3, I think, a school where we were at, and we can't even do that. So we were struggling even to fill those positions.
And one way we did remediate this is we put more money into interns. And so we intend to, and interns are used in a very similar capacity to substitutes. The administration likes them as well because there's an opportunity to retain them, you know, if you get a good one. So there's some benefit to interns. And I think to Cassandra's point, subs and substitutes and strategies, I think are very much the front of mind of most of our administrators. And if there was some magic, something, you know, they would do it. I think they work very hard to manage the hand result, you know, contractually.
Yeah, we were paying less than a lot of districts around us though prior to COVID. So, you know, I do agree with the concern and we want to make sure that we're getting, you know, quality substitutes in and, you know, so I don't really like the decrease, but especially with the certified substitutes, we want to, you know, draw them into our district and make sure our kids are.
So what do you think certified subs, $125 a day?
No, we're paying, 125 versus the other 120, versus 100 if you're not certified,
Certified is 150.
or 150, yeah.
So is it considered a 7-hour day, 6-hour day? So they get paid about 20, was that $30 an hour, $27 an hour, depending upon, is that about what we need?
Code rate.
We are far more competitive.
That's a market figure, I understand it. But that's.
I researched it,
And I,
2 sub myself.
The other thing to think of is this isn't all just absences, right? This is covering IEPs and other reasons why the teacher may have to be out of the classroom, you know?
so
So,
building something worth longer than an outside stuff to pick them up, right?
But, you know, we'll take another look at the numbers supporting whether or not it should be and take into account if there's another option to do a building sub. So we'll come back to you with some information. So and I think it's worth it. Yeah, we can take another look at it. So I think we're looking at experience. And I think a lot of budgets swelled in subs, not for a bad reason, but because of COVID and all of a sudden every illness is 10 days. You know, the numbers did go up. And even though some of us keep thinking we're done with all that, even today, I ran into somebody who's dealing with COVID as of today. So, so it's still around, but certainly not what it was 2 years ago, and not what it was last year. Last year during the holiday season, you know, everybody and their brother was out. So, but we can take another look and come back to you with kind of substantiated or change it, so, if that works for you. So, move forward a little bit.
I think some of these next pages are going to move a little faster. Page 4 is for the most part coaches. coaches and assistants. It does have clubs as well, PAPH clubs. Contractually, the rate for each of these is contractually determined, and it also depends on the clubs that we plan on running, and so there's a 1.2% increase on this one. I'm just going to keep moving until someone tells me to stop. Page 5, chaperones. Again, mostly athletics, and it's based on planning from our athletic director and history, and so there's a small decrease on that row. Page 6, homebound tutors. That's based on our best estimate for and what we have been using for homebound tutoring, and that shows about a 5% increase in that.
What is the average of that, in terms of the number of students that are homebound?
Fluctuates, I would think, do you have that?
Right now, we have 4 students. It's unusual because they don't have placements in the placement, so
This
that's
is,
more unusual. But I believe that there's probably 4 on medical leave for medical kinds of things, and the others are again primarily for kids waiting placements or something like that.
Thank you. Next page, custodian maintainers, same configuration as in the past, contractual increase. The difference, the reason the increase is lower than what you would expect for contractual increase was the turnover of 1 maintainer and replacement with a entry-level maintainer. Page 8, part-time custodians, just reducing that resource just a little bit as part of the budget tightening in general. And, our facilities department fully uses all the resources they have, but we're tightening this up a little bit. It's just the way we can tighten it up.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When the facilities budget, I don't remember if it was a budget or they did a presentation, the time for custodials, is that going to be, could that be offset by the fees that hypothetically were supposed to be collected from the clubs? You know how there was like a collection of monies for the kids that are playing, like the different sports clubs, there was like the $10 per student, like
Yeah, if
per
there's
club,
any-
like those fees that were going to be collected that haven't been collected
If-
recently.
So our custodians each work 40 hours. If they do work extra time to cover an event or an activity for, anything that we're hosting outside of school hours, that overtime or extra time is not in this budget. That's paid for by the fees that we collect. So you won't see that in your
Okay,
budget.
so this is apples
This
to
is-
oranges?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Office professionals, page 9. We did have a change related to our payroll department, and that's what you see reflected here. Our payroll is shared services, so some of the offset here is also impacted on the town's budget. And that reduction and change in personnel is driving a decrease on this.
So the 2.5% increase for wages for office professionals, when staff are being reviewed in the evaluation process, they automatically just get 2.5%, or is there 2.5 is the bucket, and one person might get like 1.5 and somebody a little bit more?
So the contracts have specific rates, so based on service. Each contract is different somewhat, but they spell out what the rates are. The performance pay or merit pay is not part of our contracts.
And steps.
They've been attempting to get into education and contracts, and they, from what I understand, have never been able to stay, generally speaking. So I know in the outside world, it's used regularly, but not so much in education.
Yeah. So, but also the disparity, so you look at the office professionals, which do great work every day, all day, right? I mean, around the front lines too, 2.5% increase as opposed to other staff that are getting a 5+% pay increase.
Right. There happen to be a number of office professionals who are newer to the district, that's kind of part of that changeover. So some of the office professionals were left at a much higher rate, and we hired people that cost us, so I don't know if it's actually the contract amount.
Well,
But that, the reason that it's lower
Yeah.
is
Well,
that
take-
several of the people were hired at a lower rate than people who left the district. A lower step.
Yeah, so 2.5% is part of the picture, and step is another part of the picture. And so when an office professional comes in, they'll be on the first step. There are far fewer steps with office professionals than with our certified staff, but that is part of the picture. It's, and what we're describing is education everywhere. And this is pretty much, we're constrained with how this works.
I can't remember top of my head what the office professionals increase was, but it's pretty much in line with everybody else's. So it's not like their percentage was lower, or, like their increase was lower or anything. So,
And there is a reduction of half person overall
Right.
of FTE.
Yeah.
One thing that we had, and this is pointing this out more as the discussion goes on, was a contractual percentage increase that our budget is. And the budget shows a 5-point-something increase, but of that, we had a figure in the past that showed how much of that was contractual obligations. And that, when all of these positions, all of the increases are basically contractual obligations. Because of the 5 union contracts that we have to work with.
Yeah, one of the first things we do when we do our budget process is we calculate the contractual increases to just see what the overall budget would be, just with the contracts alone, never mind any other changes.
And other contractual obligations we have too, as well as existing fuel contracts, bus contracts, all of that. If you look at a 5-point-something increase, but probably all but maybe 1% of that, less than 1% of that, is contractual obligations.
Yes.
But we presented that number to you a couple months ago, but
Yeah.
we can get it again.
Yeah.
And bring it back, so
If that, because it
happy to do that.
may have changed a little bit.
Page 10 is paraprofessionals. In one way, that's similar to what we saw with teachers, and another way, it's different. So the way it's similar, I'll start from the bottom, or near the bottom, is the offsets row, where you can see, because we don't have ESSER, we're not, that the amount funded by the Board of Ed has increased by $295,000. So we're offsetting far fewer paras that have been funded through the ESSER grant. The other part of the para story is that we have needs in the district that has required the increase of paras from 68.2 to 79.2, largely in special education, and those are needs required by IEPs and necessary to
But we have none at MSP now?
I beg your pardon?
We have, right here it shows that FTEs at MSP are 0.
They got reclassified. No regular ed. No, there's all of the special ed services. All pairs, those for special ed.
We have 19 at the
So-
elementary level, 0 at MSP, 3 at PHS, and in special services we have,
yeah.
Special
I think it's
services,
there.
57 in special services are throughout the district.
yeah.
Right, but there's none for the regular ed right now.
I mean, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in how we classify paraprofessionals. For the most part, our paraprofessionals report through Vicki.
Yeah.
Through our
Yeah, that's
special
the
education
special
department.
services.
And the way we break it down here.
We had 2 at MSP this year, then what, there's none next year. That's,
All but I think, 2 pairs in the
Was
entire
ESSER
district.
funded? They were ESSER funded.
So it needs to be no pairs at the middle school?
No, it means that we have the one person that does in-school suspension, works with the open choice program and student support. So he would be a regular ed tutor, but was additional during ESSER, so we would lose him. But all of our special ed students that have a para or support in their IEPs still have that.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to nurses, page 11, 4.45% increase, mostly driven by contractual, for the most part, or entirely driven by contractual. Page 12, monitors, you can see a $30,000 loss in offsets. And again, I'm starting at the bottom, related to the ESSER funding and the corresponding decrease before offsets to net to a small decrease overall for our monitors. Next page, tutors. We talked about this earlier when we looked at administrators. We reduced 3 tutors to compensate for the addition of 1 special ed administrator. You see that reflected on this page. And you also see offsets, $113,000 of offsets being lost, but even so, the net is still a net reduction in tutors. Actually, I should add too that some of these tutors that were, there was a reduced tutor that's offset by in contractual services that we'll see in the contractual services line later. And getting close to the end of our salaries section, non-bargaining is the staff that is not related to any contract, they all have individual contracts. We increased 1 non-bargaining, actually one it's 0.03, so it's just a categorization of full-time equivalents. And absorbed, for the most part, I think there are school safety personnel that have been covered by ESSER that are now absorbed into the district. And the other thing noted here is just a change in our technology department. We have a lead technician offset by the reduction of a regular technician. Next page is unused. Page 16 is also unused. And that gets us through our salary section. Permission to move on?
Just to say that, so what we are seeing here with all the offsets and the pulling out of all the ESSER money, this is the cliff, right, that everybody's been talking about. So, this is, we've been talking about the financial cliff for, a lot of years. And since all that ESSER money came in, and this is where we're at, this is what's driving the 5.59% increase. And so it's not a pleasant place to be.
So before we move on to page 17, I think an important way to end the salary section might be to flip all the way back to your previous tab, look at that last page, your previous tab, which we skipped over. Page 13 in the previous tab, it says grant and offset utilization, top. And just to bring home that point that Becky just made, right above the subtotal of salary transfers, there's a line for ESSER salaries, and we absorbed $1,065,093 from the last budget. We gave you a position by position detail of what that was. You asked about that, so we'll give you that again. If you can see the gray column in the superintendent's budget, there's nothing absorbed on that line. So that's $1,065,000 of offsets that were reduced on the pages we just went through.
Or were some of those transferred though to other grades? like some of them said, like you reduced positions, but those positions were offset by different grants.
Less so by other grants, more so in your budget. The driver, the biggest driver, or one of the biggest drivers in the 5.59% budget is the absorption of some of this $1,065,000. And you saw that in those salary ratings that we just went through.
And if you run down here, you see where it said, adopted 23, 24, and you go over to see what the current budget is, there's not much difference in all these other grants. The big difference, obviously, is ESSER.
So, thank you for indulging me in flipping back. If we can just go to page 17 now. I'm going to go through these a little faster than we've been going, but if you want any more detail, just let me know. So health insurance is 5%, we talked about that. That's set in collaboration with the partnership plan, and Brian talked about that in summary.
You know, so just quick about the health insurance. So unfortunately, we do get that final every year after we've already decided on our budget. But if it does come in lower, then our budget is lowered before everybody votes on it. Sorry, if you wanted
Yep.
to mention that.
We were feeling that 5% was a good conservative number. The partnership plan usually, they said 4 to 7%, and they usually try to, and that's usually conservative. So 5% usually is a good conservative number.
I forget what it was last year, it was quite a bit higher.
They projected 12%, and I think they landed at around 7 or 8, something like that.
Yeah. And the year before, it was the other way, and they kind of learned their lessons, so they've gotten really shy now about their forecast. I think it was harder for them to forecast during the pandemic as well.
Sure.
Things have stabilized. Page 18 is on news. Page 19, life insurance, a 5% increase based on advice from our insurance broker. Page 20, on news, just life insurance other is combined into just life insurance. Social Security, we calculate that person by person at the contractual rates. The increase here is a little bit of that was being absorbed by the ESSER grant, and so now it's being absorbed into this budget. Page 22, retirement. We estimate the benefits that our retirees would get at the end of each year, and just based on trending, we made the decision to reduce that by $30,000. And that's, again, hard to predict because it's based on retirements that we don't know about yet.
Do we have any projections? In the past, we've had some projections. This is very early for that to happen, but any that have already announced their intention to resign or retire?
Yeah.
Just one.
We have a couple. Possible? Yeah. We've worked other things into the budget just based on what we think, which we do every year. Pension plan has a significant increase, and that's based on an actuarially determined amount that's given to us, and for the defined benefit portion of this, and that has gone up significantly. I think it's not just us; it's across the state. It's, how the plans have been actually determined and where they stand now. So we don't have a lot of control over this number. The other portion of that is calculated based on each employee. Each non-certified employee participates in, each non-TRB employee also participates in the defined contribution plan. That's calculated here as well. A lot more information than we need. Tuition reimbursement is in the administrator's contract, so this is required by contract. Unemployment compensation is based on our experience, and we believe it's a good number, so no change there. Workers' compensation was pandemic impacted in prior years, and so we also have run this by our insurance broker, and we were able to take a reduction on that line. Page 27 is our instructional software, and you see a complete list, or almost complete list. There's an all other line down the bottom, but a list of all the major software titles that are carried that roll up to this line. We provide you this every year.
Can we get a list of the all other as well?
Yeah, it says in the box, all other isn't necessarily software, because this line includes townwide art show costs, visiting authors, guest presenters, so that
I'd
11,000 isn't
I'd still be
software.
really interested in it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Page 28 is unused. Page 29 is legal fees and special education-related fees. When we talked about the reduction of one tutor, when we were on that page, we said some of it was picked up by contractual services, and that would be on this page. So there's some contractual services here that otherwise would have been, if it wasn't for this increase, we would have had staff doing this, but we're unable to find the staff to do it, so we're providing those services through this piece. Legal fees is also on here, and we include the legal fees to account for the negotiations that we have coming up in fiscal '25. Next page is technical services. This is again software. It's similar to the software page we looked at a few pages ago, but this is for non-instructional software. The biggest one there is Power School. Next page is unused. We're in the utility section now, the Mike Smith facility section. So a lot of these are just based on our current experience. First page is water. We were able to reduce that slightly. Actually, it's a slight increase. A lot of lines increase. High school increase. But we believe these are good amounts now for our water services. Next is sewer services. Small increase there. Small reallocation between lines. Next page is property services. We have a very competitive pricing from the local hauler that hasn't changed in a number of years. We're very lucky that they support us in that way.
Don't tell me. It's a secret.
So to that line, just a small change. We just added a couple of extra pickups each June that we've experienced the past few Junes as teachers clean up the rooms, and so that's really small. The next page, page 35, is building repairs, and change there based on repairs that we're facing. We did do a number of building repairs and this type of stuff through the ESSER grant. So in part, this is things that and a lot of it was just one time. The things that we did through the ESSER grant were for the most part one-time things that were non-recurring. But there was a small portion of those recurring. Repairs equipment, small increase there based on our experience. And similar comment there about ESSER. Repairs plumbing, also similar comment about ESSER and based on experience. Repairs electrical, very small increase there. The time and security, page 39, is a fire alarm, fire and intrusion alarms, and camera preventative maintenance. And so the increase there based on current experience. Repairs HVAC based on current experience.
Does any of this include warranties that we pay for, or is it done as needed, or do we have a?
I think you're asking about service contracts. A number of the costs in each of these lines that we just went through are related to service contracts. We do a very good job of doing preventative maintenance on our equipment. We have a ticketing system, and they go through and do the required preventative maintenance. Or it's not even required preventative maintenance. It's the level of maintenance and service contracts that's going to save us money in the long run. And that is built into the
So
roads
these,
that we
like you said, so these are service contracts that we pay every year. In other words, like, I have a furnace, a boiler, I should say, not a furnace, it's an oil. So I have, I pay for a contract every year, and if something would happen, then I get discounted for the services that I may need for that equipment. Do we have something similar to that in any of this?
Well, so your example is actually, we're blessed to have 4 very skilled maintainers in the
Okay.
district, and so your analogy is actually Mike Dixon, who's amazing at being able to keep up
Okay.
our HVAC. So for that particular example, we do not,
Okay,
and so a
But
lot of
is
what
there
you
someone
see here,
in-house?
we have somebody
Okay,
in-house,
okay.
and a lot of what you see in that particular example is for parts, but we do have service contracts for things like the elevator,
okay,
related to the pool, things that
Okay.
we just, we need, yeah.
got it, okay. So then we do have something, we maintain it every year
Oh, yeah.
in terms of a service agreement.
We have, this is a combination of service agreements and lots of parts. Where we can do it
Okay.
ourselves, we will. So a lot
Okay.
of the labor, we have very skilled maintainers who are able to
Okay.
keep up the equipment themselves, and so we have to buy the parts,
Right,
but then they're able to
got it,
do it themselves.
okay.
Rental is a 5-year agreement for lease copiers. That's coming up June of,
This year.
It runs out June 30th of '24, and so this is our best estimate. We're negotiating that now and going through that process now. So this is our best estimate of what we'll be paying for these copiers in the future. I don't want to jinx myself. I don't want to say anything. We're showing a very small increase there. Next page, property services. This is our officials pay. So this is for paying the officials for all of our games. It's determined by our athletic director, who does a very detailed analysis, game by game, and how much we'll be paying our officials. Next page is transportation, contractually determined, as well as a swap. So you'll see there's a swap of $100,000 between this page and page 47, roughly $100,000. And so that's how we're using our transportation between in-district and special education students, and then the rest is contractually determined. The page 44 is field trips, and that's based on scheduled field trips and what we typically run year in, year out. Transportation athletics, again, the athletic director does an analysis, sport by sport, game by game, and he was able to reduce this account a small amount. Unused, page 46, page 47 is our special education transportation, which I just talked about in relation to the in-district transportation. That reduction is offset by the page about 3 back. Page 48 is Brian's 1% on his pie chart that we talked about earlier. And page 49 is the sports, the sports portion of that we talked about. And the page 48 is increased based on consultation with our insurance advisor. So we don't have a lot to say about that. Page 50, this was far more significant amount before Kevin and his crew switched over our phone system to an internet-based system. It was a very successful project. He was able to do it far lower than most other districts because he uses internal staff instead of contracting out, which also resulted in our ongoing costs being far lower than most other districts are paying. And so we feel good about that one. Page 51 is for our mailings. We minimize our cost as much as we can for metering and bulk postage, but this is typically what we have to pay for postage for things that we don't mail. We're getting there. think, about 20 pages ago. You guys all doing all right? Page 52, we don't use. Page 53 is basically anything that falls under Lynn Davis. So it's communications, SBC stands for school and business, business partnerships. No,
Yeah.
it's this school business
Collaboration.
collaboration.
Coordinate.
I'll go with that. And a $3,000 increase that she's using to, I think, we all feel pretty good about how she justifies. And she did give us a very detailed breakdown of what she has planned for next year. So we believe that's a good investment for what we get. Page 54 is GOAG program tuition based on the number of students, and it's been flat for the past several years. There is some potential legislation that could reduce this line, but we've been advised to maintain it at the current level while the state figures out what they're going to do. Page 55 is our favorite outplaced tuition, and based on our history and where we see things going, we've made a decision to increase this by $100,000. We haven't increased this in a number of years, and it's overrun for a bunch of years, and so we believe that the $100,000 increase will get us to a more accurate budget for this line.
This is pretty much the most volatile line item, I would say, has the most ability to go in bad places than pretty much any other. It's all Vicky's fault. She's right there, too.
It's pretty amazing how it's been able to be maintained at this level, and what they have to go through and how hard it is to students in districts, which is better for the students and also better for our costs. At the same time, the cost of each individual outplacement has skyrocketed.
So, Sam, I had a question. Is there any statistics or information to, like, I kind of outline prior to COVID, after COVID, as far as the number of students in outplacement? I mean, has the lack of one-on-one, in-person education services, like speech, PTOT, how much has that affected the needs of students as they get older to go into the outplace, because it's just more severe for them to have more increased needs? Is there
I can speak to it. I do have a historical from 2015. So when I first started as director, we had 39 kids outplaced. We're down to 18.
So what about like the past 5 years?
So I keep the numbers from June of each year. So in June of 2020, we had 25 kids, then 28 kids, and now we're down to 20 and 18. So honestly, through COVID, we had more kids outplaced because we truly couldn't program
Right, that's
for them
what I was-
here.
okay.
So we've
So
been,
those numbers have gone
we've been
down
bringing
because
those
we-
kids back into district because we have.
Oh, that's good to hear. I was wondering if it had gone up, then that's good news.
In 2019, we were down to 19. So then we had that bubble in the middle of 20 and 21, and 25 and 28, and now back to 2018, and hopefully continuing.
Good work. Thank you.
But it does mean, and so sometimes that's the hardest part, is the offsets of the cost of those outplacements. I just met with the bureau chief last Friday, because we were talking about prices are just astronomical and really unsustainable at those districts level. And so we have to come up with some other way to give it so. And we've been doing it by building programs within our district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Page 56 is unused. Page 57 encompasses all the travel, both in district and out of district for anyone who travels. And that increase is based on experience. It's still far lower than what it was pre-COVID. The world changed a bit, and so a lot of what would have happened in meetings now is happening virtually. And so this is one of the lines that has remained lower than it had been pre-COVID. What I just said was not exactly accurate. There's a small amount for travel for certain specialists who travel between schools on page 58, and that stays the same, $3,000. Page 59 is other purchase services, has graduation expenses, super senior expenses, some other high school events. It also includes central office services for, I talked about our insurance broker. I talked about we pay for an unemployment tax service, and so some of those fees are in here. And the increase in this line is to pay for learning adventure days. And so learning adventure days had been paid through the COVID grant, and it's one of the things we would like to maintain and believe is important to the programming at the high school. That $12,525 increase is $12,000 of that is for learning adventure days. Page 60 is maintenance supplies based on just based on the inflation in those supplies and what we are currently paying. Similar with custodial supplies.
So how is that different than the other, like, couple pages back, we have some questions about?
This is cleaning supplies. So page 60 is cleaning supplies. No, I'm sorry. Page 61 is cleaning supplies. Page 60 is the difference between this page and the costs that were charged to those maintenance contracts is these are things like batteries and these are small supplies, whereas the things charged to the previous pages would be parts. If they're replacing a part of something, that goes to the previous page. If it's just things we need in the district, screws, random tools, random parts, that go to this maintenance page. Page 62 is essential supplies, just an amount based on inflation, increase based on inflation and what we're currently running. Page 63 is copy paper. It's our centrally controlled copy paper for the district, and that's closely monitored. We have something called paper cut that's on every copier, so we can work to be efficient with our use of paper around the district. And so we're just, and the increase here is based on what we're currently running. If it had been higher than this, I think, we had a COVID impact, and now it's stabilizing at a level. Page 64, supplies instructional, is supplies used in all the classrooms across the district. There's also supplies used for the illustrative math curriculum for grades K to 5. And that increase is related to that math program and NGSS materials. Page 65, non-instructional supplies. So this is supplies used outside the classroom. Examples are given in that box for the types of supplies. It also includes supplies for the new VEX program and expanding our VEX programs are in this line. And make up a big part of the increase. Page 66, testing supplies. The increase is based on 67, I think that description relates to a different line.
Yeah, because it's talking about,
It's talking about the telephones class, so I think I owe you a description on page 67.
So under the notes section, that was for another slide and we
I think
got it.
so. Page 68, non-professional software. And so that includes software to run our energy and technology. And that increases a modest increase just based on experience. Page 69, we're able to decrease our gas estimates and budgeted amounts based on our analysis of our current activity.
Do we think it's realistic?
It's not that, yeah, I questioned it as well, and our facilities department believes that these are good estimates. You know, I don't think it's that the costs are going down, I think it's just he did a better job of estimating it.
No, Top Lawn has both gas and oil, correct?
As what?
Top Lawn has both gas and oil.
The schools that have both gas and oil, we really don't burn oil. We burn gas in all of our schools. We use gas.
Because they had an oil leak at Top Lawn last week.
And that's related to a system that's, yes, it's dual fuel, but it's,
It had a small amount of oil in it
Oh,
last
yeah.
week, and it had a little less that day. And it doesn't have any anymore. So, yes, in idea, concept, it could do either fuel, but we only have gas coming in there at this point.
But in case the oil is a backup, yeah.
for several of the buildings, I think they're doing.
yeah, we're fortunate to be replacing our high school boilers. They're beyond end of life.
Oh, yeah.
And the town is using ARPA money to replace them, and we're replacing them with units that just burn propane and aren't food fuel because of how we use them.
Are you finding it cheaper going that route?
I think it's natural gas.
I'm sorry, natural gas. I keep saying propane, I'm sorry about that. Natural gas, my bad. Yes, I think, yes. It's more.
It's more expensive to get a unit that's a dual fuel, so you have to kind of say to yourself, is it worth it to do that?
Well, and that's why I'm posing the question,
Yeah.
and not the dual fuel, but is it better to go the gas route? Is it more efficient to go in terms of monies, to go the gas route or the oil route? Since you can only choose one or the other, not the dual.
You know, it's a sizable investment. and so
I was just gonna
before
say,
making the
that's
purchase,
pretty,
You know, and
they're much more expensive.
it was a month long process to replace these boilers, to go out to RFP, to decide what the specifications that made most sense for us, and working closely with a vendor who helped us do the analysis. And so it was a very detailed decision to replace those boilers with.
Will we be
gas
getting
burning.
any kind of rebates now, since we are going to be going completely to gas? Any kind of energy rebates for in the program?
Not that I know of.
I thought Steve Bustle did a contract. Does this have anything to do with like the Eversource thing that he had put together for us? Or is that over with now?
Is that lighting?
I'm sorry?
Is that lighting?
Eversource is lighting and gas.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was an Eversource program where we were able to get boilers replaced at the middle school at a very good rate. They gave us a 5-year loan, and that loan was repaid through the reduction in our energy expenses. And so the town had to appropriate it, but then they didn't have to pay for it because it was paid for out of our energy, out of our utility expenses. And but that was fully paid a couple years ago. As far as I know, there aren't any programs right now
No.
for that. That's Eversource used to have more programs like that.
Right, yeah.
They do have a solar program that we're looking into, that we can take, take advantage of.
But it might be worth just double checking, because I know they have quite a few programs for homeowners. I only say that because we did that for some changes we had to make at our home recently. And I do remember seeing things for, it's probably, I don't think it's, it'll take a couple minutes to check.
Sure.
I have a question. With the EV powered vehicles being in the news and the prospect of us having to have all EV powered cars by 2035, I think, or purchasing anyways, what plans does the school have to get parking and EV charger stations for all the teachers and staff here so that they can? Oh, no, it's back up for a vote.
I thought it was, the vote was, I thought the vote was.
No, it was first by the governor, had the executive order type of process, but that is now gone to the legislature.
I heard that they turned it down.
Well, still, probably, I'm just saying, in the works. So eventually, I would imagine the schools within the district, maybe not by 2035, but I don't know if there's any EV charging stations at any of our schools.
So I believe we have one here that I think can service 2 cars. And then there's one at the town hall. And those are set to be replaced. The town is working on it. In terms of doing a wide-scale EV approach, as far as I know, that has not been discussed.
Perhaps that's.
It would be extremely cost prohibitive. But, it's something
I'm
certainly.
saying if it's going to be
it will need to
mandated,
be
you
on
know
the
how we
list.
do the turf. Oh my gosh, help me out, Sam. The turf.
Fun.
Thank you. Maybe we should do an EV parking
Sure.
charger fund. Just a thought. Because it really is not, I don't think it's a good idea to have everybody with these cars, but if it's going to be, mandated, then
We'll be there.
yeah, it'd be good to be
Yeah.
at least a little ready. That's not that far away.
For that.
Right.
Buses becoming EV buses.
Yeah, Hartford's getting,
So that is a.
That's a huge expense to the school
But I
district.
mean, the buses will be, I guess it depends on who owns your buses.
Right.
Yeah, for your transportation
Plus
costs
transportation,
are going to have to
They're
go up.
probably taking like $5.
but then you won't have to pay.
For, okay.
It'll be-
Sorry. Nothing's free, so,
Okay, so,
anyways, just a thought, energy.
thank you. Good.
Yeah.
So just quick time check, it's 8:45, we're on page 70 or 79. We have 3 more pages in our energy section, and then I'm going to call this the home stretch. All right, so here we go. So page 70 is energy electric. Again, our facilities department did a detailed analysis. They believe we can hold steady on our electric costs. Our next page, 71, is just a small amount of fuel for the generators. And last page of the energy section is page 72, and that's our gasoline and diesel that we contract for lower than market rate. And each year, we've been fortunate to be able to contract at a pretty good rate. And this year, we were able to contract at a rate of a small amount. We already contracted for fiscal 25 at a small decrease from our current rate. Moving into the supplies, textbooks section. So this is comprised of middle school, high school, and adult ed textbooks. The increase there is related to the math program at MSP, or World Language Program at PHS. The administrators in those schools put in their detailed requests for what it would take to run those programs that have been approved through our curriculum committee.
Now, why aren't they utilizing more of the Chromebooks for this, and then just using copy, paper for certain sections. I know that's what they did for my son when he was,
It's a new program.
oh,
You'll look at it now. It's because it's all new. Yeah.
Move on to page 74, workbooks, very small change there, and it's required to support dual credit TONCIS courses. And it relates to accounting workbooks for approximately 60 students. The library page is very closely managed by Deb Heupel, and it's the cost of library supplies in all of our schools. Very small increase there. Periodicals, kind of related to your Chromebooks comment, we're able to reduce the use of periodicals. And this includes note flight program for general music classes, which is similar to Google Drive for music. Page 77, we're really getting there. Small amount of classroom equipment. That includes technology, education, art, and other equipment, and no increase there. Page 78, equipment replacement. That increase relates to musical equipment needs at the high school and 22 pieces of tech ed equipment and at the middle school that are far beyond their useful life. And last but not least, dues and fees. This represents dues and fees across the entire district for all the organizations and support. This supports our specialized staff in a variety of areas. We continually review these and make sure that each one has value to the district. And that is our budget.
Good job, Sam.
yeah.
Ripping off a Band-Aid. Right? Yeah.
So at this point, we may, we may want to just kind of just start thinking about questions, looking at this a little more on our own, seeing what we have. And if we have questions, you want to send them to you in advance before is it the 23rd?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
If you guys are okay with the process that we did last year, where there was a link and you would submit questions, we will send you that link tomorrow morning. It's a very, for those who weren't here, it's a very simple form. You submit your questions, and we come prepared to answer them at the next workshop meeting. In addition, I have 8 questions that I jotted down from tonight that will also answer at the next meeting.
And that one page that you were going to
Yes, the one page.
figure
Yeah,
out.
that was one of them.
Okay.
Page, yeah, 6, I believe.
67.
Yes, thank you.
Do you think we can have just the most up-to-date spreadsheet for what has been utilized, ESSER has been utilized for? It'll probably spare you a lot of questions
Sure.
ahead, so you don't have to keep asking, we can just reference the list. Even if it's I don't know how long this list could be, but even expenditures that we wouldn't, as a board, had say so.
Yeah, sure.
You know, just so we can get that.
And
I think that might be
I think you're
helpful
asking
for
for
your
we-
reference points.
I think you're asking what we provided before, right, Rachel?
Yeah,
Periodically
we've had it in the
review
past, I
list
just didn't know
of
if anything else had
Sure.
transpired since
Yep.
then, just the most up-to-date list.
Absolutely.
That'd be great, thank you.
Sure.
One of the other things, I just wonder what how we know what our solar panels are doing on our buildings right now, because they're aging. And I'm just not sure if we have any way of knowing that. I'm sure something must come, but we haven't seen anything on it. yet.
Efficiency, how efficient are they still?
Yeah, we do get some, we just did an analysis and worked with the solar companies just about a month ago, and they are still paying back, but we are looking at solar panels on the roof of this building in collaboration with the town, as well as Teflon. So it's an Eversource program. They don't do the kind of boiler type programs we were able to do several years ago, but they are doing some solar programs, and we think we should be able to take advantage of those programs.
Do you think that that will be part of the MSP renovation, is trying to get them on that school too?
We wouldn't be able to do that with the roof the way it is. They won't put solar panels on a roof unless it's in good shape.
Well, I thought that would be part of the renovation, was the roof. No.
No, so once the roof is renovated, then we would be
Then you can
eligible,
do it,
we
right.
would be eligible for, but we don't know what kind of program will be in place at that time. That would be the time to look at it.
Right.
That question was asked at the committee, I think it was answered by CSG. It wasn't in the original plan, schematics for solar that they submitted.
Are these panels purchased by us or leased?
It's the program that Eversource, the way that it's structured, it's almost like we would collect the rent check. We would be contractually protected for anything that can happen to those, to our roof based on those panels. Somebody else will own them, be responsible for maintaining them, and we basically get a rent check.
So similar to lending.
So
Yeah.
we release them basically, or they just,
So it's actually a virtual metering agreement essentially. So
Okay.
somebody else owns them, somebody else takes care of them, and we essentially get some agreements are 10 cents on the dollar. So if you were going to pay $1 for whatever kilowatt hours, then you only pay 90 cents, and that's your discount. That way, they're dealing with the warranties. That way, they're
Okay.
dealing with the manufacturers who are not generally in this country. Most of them in this country left a few years ago. And all the issues with dealing with Eversource are their problem.
Okay,
We
that would
just- We
include-
just deal with money. And the financial arrangements around solar agreements there are actually lawyers, that's pretty much all they do is solar agreements because of how wacky they are.
well, yeah, I'm also
Professional.
thinking of, you're saying that somebody else owns it, so then we would not be responsible for any type of disposal fees.
Right.
That's another thing which can be quite,
Yeah. And probably is going to become more of a problem down the road.
oh, yeah. That's why I was asking if we own them or lease them.
So I think, it's a $45 million budget, so 1% is $450,000. So when you're looking at this and asking questions, that sounds it's a lot. So it's significant to move it down, incremental pieces. It'll be complicated. So, or not complicated, but not easy. That being said, I will tell you that I was feeling like, this is way too high, because I really would rather it be much lower, because this is just not a percentage I've ever talked about. But with that said, apparently we will be right in the realm of our neighboring districts. In fact, we may be under numerous neighboring districts. Apparently this is, it seems a lot of financial issues have kind of all come together. ESSER being one of them, but just the costs of different operations just have changed. So we'll figure it out, and we'll certainly take your questions. Looking forward to them. So thank you, Sam, for putting this together. It was a lot of work. And answering my questions was a lot of work too.
On a practical question, and I'm not sure if this is for this body or maybe for the town council, but how do we find out what the implications of this budget are for the mill rate?
So that's the grand list piece, right? So there's a few things affecting that. The state's intending to give us an extra $500,000 in ECS, which is the state's educational funding formula. So 500,000 is covered, there's 1%, in terms of the impact of the town. But then the grand list has to be considered, and if it's changing in a positive direction, it's possible the tax, in terms of mill rate, is negated even more. So we should know that in the next few weeks, but right now, that's not, I do not know what the mill rate,
The other,
the grand list number is.
one other impact is the largest state grant. It's called PCS grant for education, and we're in the fortunate position to have an increased PCS grant. Our PCS grant has gone up about $230,000 each year for the past several years, and that money comes into the town, it doesn't come to us. In fiscal '25, we expect that to go up over $500,000. So that will help offset what we propose for an increase that comes into the town, doesn't come to us. It's just legislatively, it's how the legislature passed their
There are
budget.
some districts that are losing that.
Yeah.
So the state, for a long time, had a formula back like 2000, the angelic formula. It stands for something, it's not about angels. And so that said, look, taking all these factors, poverty, English language learners, high need students, all these factors, put it into one of those beautiful multivariable calculus formulas, and said, here's what all towns should be funded per student. And that was a great plan, but then somewhere, I think about the next year, they decided, well, that's great, but we don't want to change it because it would mean decreasing town A and increasing town B. So and this is a general sense, for about 10 years, they didn't change the formula, they just added money to it. So what did that built up this inequity issue. So some districts right now, if you look at that formula, which has been redone a few times, are now getting $1 million more than they should. And other districts are not, even if everybody stayed the same. Add another layer, our district has increased our students with needs and financial needs, has increased. So we are actually on the winning side of the financial piece of that to say we should be getting more support from the state. So the state's fix is to throw I think it's down to 10 years now, throw a 10-year fixed program on it, draw a trajectory for that 10 years, and I think we're in year 2 or 3 of that, and say let's fix it all in a 10-year window. And so that's why we are scheduled to get increases of between $250,000 and $500,000, increasing over years to bring that into the realm of where it should be. That being said, this year is pretty safe. The following year requires the biennial budget to follow that formula. And so it requires state legislators to stay on that track, and they have not always been able to do that.
We're almost fully funded now.
Is that right?
So, yeah, the risk is getting less and less. We're almost up to our $12 million of 12 point, I forget the decimal. Anyway, so
Most people
over
are
$12 million
staggered
fully funded at
So-
excess cost.
So those funds that we get from the state, are we required to use them in a certain bucket? Or is it across the board the way we
So
spend?
great question. Those funds actually come in as town revenue that are to be applied for education.
Anywhere in
Applied to
education, even though you're saying it has,
So it actually doesn't hit our books. It's town revenue, just like taxes.
right,
But it's intended to support education in the town. So
okay,
it doesn't actually hit, we don't spend it per se.
okay,
We spend the money we
Got it.
are budgeted,
okay,
and the town uses that to offset their budget.
okay, thank you.
If that-
Those are the offsets
Yeah.
that you see in the budget.
So,
No, that wouldn't be in this budget.
right.
No, there, you.
That
the
would be the
offsets.
town's budget, not our budget. Not here.
revenue.
And there are,
Right.
and there's other grants that are specific to offsets to here as well.
That's why that affects the mill rate. The original question is, how is the mill rate going to be affected? Because that
Yes.
money goes directly to the.
The impact of the town's onus on the budget piece for us.
We can try to answer that question here as soon as the information is available to us. It comes through the town, but, we follow along and try to provide information about how we fit into the bigger picture and what the impact on the mill rate is.
Yeah, I mean, it's right, so it's, right now, about 73% of the budgets are our budget, right? And so a 5% increase has a real factor on real folks in our community. And so, while everything else is getting more expensive and a substantial potential mill rate increase, for some of the folks in our community who are already struggling the most, I'm really concerned about our ALS population, and some of the elderly folks, and some of our families in the district. Having substantial increases really does have an impact on people. And so somebody's got to pay for it, right? And so it's usually, and the majority of folks, I think commerce and real estate pays, it's just a small percentage of the overall budget. The other reality is the real driving factor of the budget is property taxes, right? And it's the largest source of taxation in the towns, home ownership as well as cars and things like that. So, this budget has some pretty specific implications in our community with almost a 6% increase, and that was at pre-scope on the backs of some of the folks that are struggling the most in our community. So I want us to be mindful of those things as we proceed. Because yes, we want the best education for our kids. We have to look at the entire town in that first budget as well. And I would argue now is not the time to raise people's taxes when people are struggling the most.
But we did have an.
We're getting
increase
things
last year.
increased on us is we can't even go to the grocery store anymore. I mean, it's affecting everybody. And the mill rate is going to eventually go up. You cannot keep the mill rate not moving for this many years. We have to do what's right for the children, which is our future.
Well, we did increase, the town council did increase the mill rate last year.
Not very much.
Well, according to my taxes, they did.
Well, that's just, mill rate is, subjective,
We also got
because it all
reassessed.
has to do with the reval and who gets
We
reval.
reval, and then they
It's
increased, so.
it's a big, so, there's been times when it actually, hasn't gone up.
So even though it hasn't gone up much, the reval really
Yeah,
sucked it to us.
that's what it is, so, in different pockets of different,
Right.
people get hit differently every time.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and I think the most challenging thing that I've processed over the last couple of years is that we spend a lot of time investing in this budget, as you guys spend way more time, administrators, and when I look at the needs, and, we're saying that the majority of this budget we have absolutely no say-so over, and we're giving, double the merit increase in these contracts. So basically, so my understanding is we're just forced. So we can't talk about 70% of this budget because it's contractual and it's dictated to us. We can't drive performance with pay, which I don't know of any other industry that doesn't drive performance through compensation. So that's how it is, so I get it. But that means 70% of this budget, therefore almost 70% of the town's budget, we're supposed to accept we have no say-so over. So that's just, as I sit here coming into my third year, my third budget, I'm just sitting back perplexed, because then it gets into us nitty-gritty, line iteming 27% of this budget that actually really impacts the things that we need, and we can't, I would like to be having conversations of increasing some of these areas, but we can't even go to those conversations because our hands are tied behind our back. But yet then we're talking about chronic absenteeism, not just in our students, but in our teachers. So I wonder, where is the incentive? And this is just general. This isn't individual, this is just general. I heard the answer, this is just education. So it just, I have more questions than answers as I go through this experience as a citizen and now a Board of Education member. So I guess moving forward, my question for me is, how do we better negotiate these contracts, and when do we have some control, and what do we have control over?
So when we go to negotiate contracts,
You will.
you're in a tough spot then
Yeah.
too, because you're looking at what is everybody else
Yeah, yeah.
doing for contracts? Do we want to keep our people in Plainville? Because we're never top of the.
That's another
pack.
part of this job nobody
And
ever told you
What we,
about.
what we do is we try and measure that, you know, what will keep people here. People stay here in Plainville because it's a good place to work, and they like the district, and they like the, you know, they like the feel of the district, they like being here. And it's different than a lot of districts around us as well. So we don't pay top dollar, but we also have to look at what point do we hit that tipping point where people are like, yeah, we like you, but guess what, we can't afford to stay there with you, you know? So it's always a real balancing act, and you come into this, and basically you have very strict kind of guidelines of what everybody else is doing, and you have to try and stay in there in that same area, or you're not gonna be able to be successful.
Or
in
you're
the
gonna
contract.
have, it sounds like also, where someone might come and stay, our retention isn't looking that great, and we can go down into, and that, I heard that right, there's a lot of moving parts. This isn't the same as it once was pre-COVID. So people are moving and changing industry, and that is across industries. People aren't staying, you know, for 20 years, 25 years like they used to. Sometimes you have to make moves, sometimes even lateral moves, to be able to get ahead. So I just think the hiring process and retention is changing anyway. It's just, again, I have more questions than answers, and this certainly does put Mr. Reese in a very difficult situation, coming in here on the verge of the cliff.
What I find frustrating is we have this increase, but I'm looking at this budget and it's like, all right, what are the kids getting, right? 6 less tutors, you know, less staff.
Mhm.
We're not looking at a build-up of resources. Curriculum doesn't look like they're spending a dime in this budget. You know, we're not seeing like these, you know, big improvements to better our, you know, for the betterment of our kids.
But this is almost 6%.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, when you look at this and you look at where would you make cuts, this one's almost instantly like where? Like where? And more staff, more, you know,
When is the next teacher contract up?
like it's every year.
No, it's a 3-year, I think, 3-year.
So I think this is the first year of their 3-year contract. So you wouldn't talk about it next year, but the following year you would start probably negotiating in the summer. So I think that puts you in summer '26, you would get serious about negotiating.
I think it's high. I don't know many places where you get 6% increases or 5% pay increases. It doesn't happen in my sector, that's for sure.
Me neither.
All over the last
Never
couple of
been
years.
mine.
I went through this since 1999.
We needed them, you know, teachers were
I've never,
being everything.
never had the increase, I mean, that I've seen in certain areas here, ever in my career.
But then again, I see like, 2.5% increases for other staff. Well, I mean, they're pretty darn amazing, we interact with them all the time, just to see how some unions are able to negotiate better contracts than others, and where, like the admin support staff and
Wait,
others.
can you do that? Can we get that, Sam? Can we just, for information purposes, because I don't think they're that far off. And obviously, there's the step part that's really different. And, on salary, it's a lot higher. A 3% increase is a lot higher than a 3% increase for
Right.
somebody who's.
And you're getting a 2.5 on lower salaries,
Yeah,
those are probably some of the
yeah.
lowest salaries in the district.
Can you get us just, all of our contracts from custodians?
What happens too is that sometimes when we hire people, we're not hiring at step one. We're hiring, this district has a positive reputation, and so people will come practically with years of service. So not every new employee to the district is coming in at the first step either.
Especially not now. The other piece are teacher's contract has, is, I believe, 17 steps.
Yeah.
So there are increases. The problem with that is if you have a district next door who has the same exact starting figure and the same exact ending figure, in terms of, but theirs only says 10 steps.
Yeah.
When they hit step 10, you're only halfway through the contract for here. So, the same 10-year person can walk to that. They know this, so I'm not telling anybody anything they don't already know, but unfortunately, it doesn't help us when we're dealing with staff.
We have tried to
Departures.
consolidate those steps all
So,
the time.
but it's very expensive negotiations to
Yeah.
consolidate steps.
And then a single run of teachers, maybe 17 steps in 17 straight years, because we've had step freezes, we've had freezes in 2008. So there's people who are 20 years still climbing to get the top steps.
And even with the increase that they had last year,
Yeah,
or the surrounding towns,
Staff here,
still,
here more
you
than
don't have to go
25
too far to
years.
make more.
And we've had some that are over 40.
But this, there's always somewhat of a feeling of being bleak at the beginning of the budget season, because it feels like, somehow we all find our way through that, so I'm sure we will. So if you have questions, we'll send you the link, make sure you let us know. Don't be surprised if we ask clarifying, kind of exactly what you're looking for. Sometimes we think we know what you want, but it's not totally clear. I think Roberta gets the prize for great questions tonight, to make sure we're very clear. She had she didn't call them clarifying questions, but
She wanted another
clarifying
meeting.
questions. What's that?
She wanted another meeting.
That's right.
Surprise. All right, so, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Adjourn, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.